I get a lot of messages, and one of the messages that I've asked in the past and are being asked again now is, Glenn, can you share your prison story? So I'm happy to do that, but I want to preface it by saying a couple of things. Firstly, a lot of people seem to bridge up or brag, and I'm not having to go at anyone else. I'm talking about me, about being in prison. It's not something I'm proud of at all. Any idiot can do it. I accomplished it. It's not easy to. It's pretty easy to get locked up. It's a lot harder to stay out and be a normal person. So be proud of those that didn't go, right? But anyway, I'd spent 10 years preceding my prison sentence on the streets of King's Cross, a heroin addict. By the time I got arrested, I was addicted to 140 mils of methadone. I was on H. I was on everything, mate, Jack and Jills. I'd overdosed 13 times on the main street of the Cross, not to mention I'd overdosed other times outside of there. And I just happened to get arrested and put in prison for an armed robbery. It's a long story. It's not really what happened. That's not neither here or there. And I just happened to get locked up at the time the riots were on, right? Which meant that I got kept in the cells for 6 weeks without petrol, without my dome, without anything, right, for the whole 6 weeks in fucking sick as Rookwood. The first 9 months of my prison I found difficult because I was in withdrawals, I was sick, I was getting flashbacks of my trauma, and add to that I was caged in a fucking cell 19 hours a day, and I found that hard to adjust to. The other part of people's prison stories I hear all the time is, yeah, bro, when I was in this and I bashed this and I did that. That's not my story, man. I didn't get involved in drama. I had a few different altercations at different times in prison, but for the most of my prison sentence, it was pretty alright because I just didn't, get involved in shit. I didn't gamble. I didn't touch drugs while I was in there. I didn't get involved in jail politics. I didn't walk around like a Robert Sangster, like a gangster. I just did me. I trained every day. I got healthy. I jogged, and I was doing my school certificate when I was in prison. I went from to MRC, to Parramatta, to CIP, to Bathurst, to X-Wing, to Oberon. That's me jail. I only had a few incidences. I had one at one of the prisons where a guy walked into the prison and I recognised him straight away. He recognised me. We grew up together in Mount Druitt. And when I was in Mount Druitt once I went down there, he tried to stand over my brother, so I went round to call him out. And he happened to have about 8 different blokes in the house, and so we had a fight with me versus about 8 of them, and I didn't come out the winner. And obviously there was 8 of them, and I'll never forget that. But then in King's Cross one day, I'm standing out front of the snooker room with me mates, and who should happen to walk past? Him and that crew of guys. I gathered and mustered a group of guys and chased them out of the Cross. Didn't actually end up in fisticuffs, they outran us. But when he walked into the jail and saw me, he was like, oh no, have we got dramas, bro? And I said, psst, just let it go, bro. We're adult men now, not little boys. We're growing up, so let's leave it in the past. I had one incident. I stayed out of fights, as I said, but the only time I really got into a fight, I had one on a football field with one of my mates, arguing over, did I touch you, did I not touch you? 3 punches were thrown and that was over. But the only real 2 incidents I had was one where I nearly got myself in real bad trouble over a guy just come out of protection in Bathurst. He was sitting there with his co-offender. When they were playing cards, he started talking about his offence. And when he told us what he'd done, I just stood up, pushed the chair behind me. I said, that's fucking putrid, bro. And I mean, who the fuck does that? And then I realised straight away what I'd done. These 2 guys were fucking dangerous, and I got myself in a froth and bubble with my mouth. Luckily for me, another guy who was at the table, who was probably better than all of us, stood up and told them to shut the fuck up. What they said was putrid, and told me to just sit down and play cards. For 3 days I felt a bit of nervousness as that went on. But I ended up getting tipped right to X-Wing and then to Oberon. And I was pretty lucky my whole sentence. I kept getting moved with these other group of friends. The only actual time I got put into Segro was for, I was in prison one time in my top slot. Blake sitting on the bottom cell just came into my cell. He's literally only just been put in there the day before. And all of a sudden this guy comes off the escort, runs into my cell and goes whack, 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 and hits him about 3 times and said, message from the bay, brah. And I don't know why, but something in me when he did that triggered, right? I was like, who the fuck are you, bro, to go running in my cell, my little space in the world, my home, and do that? I felt like it was an insult to me, right? And you don't stick your nose in other people's stuff, right? But I just did in that particular incident. And I ended up getting put into Segro for 2 weeks over my response to that. And but for the most of it, I worked in education when I got to Oberon. I used to put out a jail paper. Everyone will remember I put out a jail paper, and it was called "It Was a Happening." and I used to put in crosswords, and I used to always go around, everyone used to go, here comes Stretch again, looking for a bluey. I was always with a blue form getting people to sign me over money so that I could buy trophies for all my competitions. I was running table tennis, touch footy, soccer, cricket, whatever, just things to keep the mind from being bored. My best two achievements in prison was I managed to get a CGE, Certificate of General Education, to fulfil a promise to an abuser when I was a kid that I would one day write my book. And the second one was I ran and won a marathon at Oberon Prison. Those that were at Oberon Prison remember I ran that and came first place, and I was pretty proud of that. I stayed out of it. I got a computer course, first aid course, front end loader, forklift backhoe course. I just stayed engaged in that kind of stuff. Like I said, there's a lot of people walk around like robbers, gangsters because they've been to jail, and they talk about how tough they were, and they walk around with watermelons under, and that's their story, man, not mine. That's not mine. I wasn't a tough cunt. I wasn't anything cunt. I was just a good cunt. Everyone knew me. I got on with everyone. I literally didn't have any dramas because I didn't act like a chocolate mousse. I didn't act tough. I didn't act anything. I just acted normal, you know. I've seen a lot of sad stuff in prison, especially with blokes that didn't have any clue. You'd see in Max, they'd come in and they'd, or the worst ones were the guys that would walk around doing these ones, you know. And you'd look, as soon as you'd see them, you'd do this and you go, bro, stop it. You know, and what it was is fear, right? People get scared, so what they try to do is they try to bluff. And prison's not a place to bluff, man, because in prison there's nowhere to go. So you've either got to back up what you're putting up or don't, or just shut up, you know. And I never pretended to be anything. I've never pretended when I went in, and I haven't pretended since I got out. Prison was a time in my life, I will say, that saved my life. It sounds silly, but it actually saved my life. Where I'd come from the 10 years prior to that, with all that abuse, all that drug use, all that loss of life, the corruption of King's Cross and all that was going on in that era, prison was a relief. I had a bed, I was fed, I wasn't using anymore, so I was slowly getting my health back, so I was slowly coming alive, if you like, when I got in prison. So by the time I come out, sadly though, my addiction was doing push-ups outside the prison, and when I got out, it only took a matter of months before I was an addict again. But this time I managed to get on the program, and the programs had changed. When I was getting on the programs as a kid, I got kicked off for fighting. They used to take you up and bring you down, when all they were doing was giving you a worse heroin habit than what you had at the start. I'm not proud of any of that stuff. Like I said, I'm not proud of going to prison. I'm not proud of the stuff that I've done. I'm not proud of my addiction. What I am proud of is that I survived. What I am proud of is that I no longer do those things today, and that I now go out and use my story to try and change other people's stories, you know. There's a whole lot of other little stories I could share about stuff that I saw in jail and a couple of things that happened with me, you know, but I'll share one last one with you where I sort of got myself in trouble again. I was at Oberon Jail. I'm a bit of a prankster, I was joking, right? A guy walks into our unit in the F Troop, and as he walks in the door, he says to me, oh, I'm up in the back room, bro. I said, who the fuck are you, bro? I said, get the fuck out, mate. I said, the screws don't run this prison, mate. We do. We'll tell you where you fucking go. I was joking, man. I was sitting with a heap of mates, and in hindsight, I can see how he probably took it the way I spoke. Sitting with a bunch of boys, it intimidated him. It wasn't what I meant to do. But 10 minutes after, you hear fish at the office, and people are coming from everywhere. Stretch, they're calling you to the office, bro. I said, yeah, I can fucking hear him. Finally, Mr. Wardy, right, walks in and he goes, Fisher, we've been calling you to the fucking office. We run the fucking prison here, not you, you fucking no, rah, rah. Mate, I jumped the table, I had my face in his face, yelling, who the fuck are you talking to? And jail mentality, right? Don't dare put me on show in prison, right? That's how we behave. And I ended up getting called down to the office and nearly got kicked, but all my good stuff had managed to outweigh the one dickhead moment. And luckily for me, the day I got out of prison, I actually got into a pub fight the very first night I got out, which you would have read about in my book. And luckily for me, the publican come up and said, here mate, here's $10, get in a taxi and go home before you go back to prison. And that's because I don't drink alcohol, and I drank about 5 schooners with a mate who waited for me, you know, picked me up and for some reason took me to a pub to drink and play pool. And someone wouldn't shake my hand, right? You know, I would have went to jail because someone wouldn't shook my hand. Like, fucking, are you serious? Like, and that's the mentality of some stuff today, you know. If someone says something that disses you, you're prepared to go to jail for that? Come on, man. I'm only prepared to go to jail if you hurt my children or grandchildren. Apart from that, mate, I'm good. Say what you need to. Enjoy your day, man. I hope that clears some of that up for you. No Robert Sangster here.